Good morning. We have just one more chapter left in Mother Westwind, and then we're on to another book, which means you guys are probably set to take another AR test today after we finish this. So, this last chapter is called Mrs. Grouse Goes to Bed. Mrs. Grouse is somewhat particular about as to where she sleeps. She has reason to be, for as Mrs. Grouse, there are old Granny Fox and Reddy Fox and Shadow the Weasel, not to mention Jimmy Skunk and Billy Mink, all of whom are much given to roaming through the Green Forest at night instead of sleeping, as Mrs. Grouse insists honest folks should. And there is Hooty the Owl, whose fierce hunting cry often wakens Mrs. Grouse from pleasant dreams to shiver for a minute. She knows that there is not one of them but who would be glad of a meal of plump grouse. By daylight, she has no fear of them. Then her strong, swift wings will carry her to safety in the twinkling of an eye. They know it, too, and by day are always quiet, quite polite to Mrs. Grouse. So Mrs. Grouse is a little bit fussy as to where she sleeps. There is a certain big hemlock tree whose great green branches made the snuggest of friendly hiding places, and in this, for a long time, Mrs. Grouse had tucked her head under her wing every night. Nobody knew anything about it, for always, before she flew up there, she made very sure that no one was about to see her. But Mrs. Grouse prefers to be on the ground, and if she had felt at all safe, she would rather have slept on the ground than in the friendly hemlock tree. Sometimes, when fierce Mr. North Wind blows, she shivers a little in spite of her warm cloak of feathers. There came a day when down through the bare branches of the Green Forest sifted a million little snowflakes. Mrs. Grouse watched them pile up and pile up a great soft blanket on the ground, and she smiled as she watched, for Mrs. Grouse had a plan. The most splendid plan for a good night's rest. The black shadows came creeping through the Green Forest very early that day, and Mrs. Grouse sat on a branch of the hemlock tree smiling and watching the million little snowflakes sifting down and sifting down. Just before it became really dark, she took a good look all about to be sure that no one was watching. And then, what do you think she did? Why, she just dived head first down into the deep, softest pile of snow and worked her way along for several feet. Then she turned and around 2 or 3 times, fluffed up her feathers, made herself very comfortable, and tucked her head under her wing. And then she says, I love the gentle snow that falls and turns the world all white. It makes the very nicest bed with blankets soft and light. Though Hooty's eyes are big and round, he cannot see me here. From Granny Fox and Jimmy Skunk, I've not a thing to fear. Jack Frost may blow his coldest blasts. The storms rage high and low. I do not care the least wee bit down here beneath the snow. Almost before she had finished saying this, Mrs. Grouse was fast asleep. The snowflakes sifted down and filled up the hole that Mrs. Grouse had made when she plunged into the snow. Late that night it stopped snowing, and the moon came out. Then Granny Fox and Reddy Fox started out to hunt, for they were hungry. They came down from far-away old pasture to the Green Forest, and it was hard work wading through the snow, and by they sat down to rest. Though they didn't know it, they were almost over Mrs. Grouse, who was dreaming up warm spring days. Ugh, I don't like the snow. It tires me all out to walk through it, and it covers up things so. I haven't smelled a single track since we left the old pasture. I say, let's go to Farmer Brown's hen house. I'm dreadfully hungry, whined Reddy Fox. Old Granny Fox looked at Reddy out of the corner of one eye. You're young and I'm old, said she, and you ought to be able to stand a lot more than I can. I'm hungry too, but I'm not hungry enough yet to be willing to risk my skin by going up to Farmer Brown's hen house. An empty stomach is a whole lot better than a skin full of shot. I should think that you would have learned that by this time. I was going to propose that we take up our old home here on the edge of the Green Meadows again. But if you are still such a foolish young fox as to go talking to Farmer Brown's hen house, the very first time you'll feel emptiness in your stomach, I guess we'd better stay up in the old pasture. There isn't much to eat there in winter, and you'll have the hardest thing you've ever had, but you'll be safe. Reddy hung his head. He was ashamed of having complained. He knew that Granny Fox said was true. He tried, not hard, not to think that he was hungry. But inside, well, he was such an emptiness, such a dreadful emptiness, that it was hard work to think of anything else. And when he thought of Farmer Brown's hen house with all its roosts full of sleeping hens, it seemed as if he just had to go there. One hen wouldn't be missed, muttered Reddy. Old Granny Fox turned and cuffed Reddy's ears. I used to think that you had some fox sense in that head of yours, but you haven't got even common sense, she snapped. Fox sense versus common sense. Look behind you at those tracks. Don't you see? Suppose Farmer Brown's boy has got eyes in his head? Then when he came out to feed the hens in the morning, the very first thing he would see would be your tracks, and you wouldn't cover them up the way you can on bare ground. Now don't let me hear any more of this nonsense. Reddy looked back at the tracks he and Granny had made, and for the first time he realized what a telltale the snow is, and he hated it ever more. You're right, Granny Fox, just as you always are, and I'll try not to think about Farmer Brown's hen house, said he meekly. Granny grinned and said, An empty stomach sharpens wit. Will patient be and wait a bit. Then she added, I guess that we'll find plenty of field mice down on the green meadows when it's light, and we can catch them in the snow quite easily as in the summer grass. Mrs. Grouse lives somewhere around here, and it might be that we can surprise her. Reddy's mouth watered at the thought, and as they sat there under the big hemlock tree watching the first light of the morning creep through the green forest, Reddy thought more and more about Mrs. Grouse, until it seemed to him as if he could almost smell her, and that she must be very near. He was going to say so to old Granny Fox when a mass of snow was thrown right in his face with a great noise shooting up so close to his nose that he almost fell over backwards with fright. What? What was that? He cried when he couldn't find his voice. Granny Fox was grinding her teeth with rage. That, you stupid, was the breakfast we ought to have had. That was Mrs. Grouse, and she was sleeping right under us a whole time we've been sitting here. And from a safe place in a tall hemlock tree, Mrs. Grouse looked down and smiled on Granny Fox and Reddy Fox. It's a nice snow, isn't it? Said she. Oh, gosh. All right. Now, that is Mother West Wind's Neighbors. There are tons of these books out there. Written by the same author. He wrote lots of different stories. So it's not hard to find more if you're interested in reading more stories about the Green Meadow creatures. They're all by Thornton Burgess. Right there. I actually got this one from the library. They had it on their for sale shelf. That is that, and you can go find this one at the AR. I'll post the link or a picture so you can see what it looks like. But anyways, I'll see you guys at Zoom today. Bye.